Okay. All right. Here we are. We're live.
We made it.
We made it. Seems to be working. Um, so, to kick things off, maybe just a little introduction about why we chose this topic now, as we were just discussing before going live, before the end of the year, before everyone starts making resolutions about how much of a better person and better habits we want to have in the new year.
Hmm.
Um, it all starts with you, really, and we can't make, I know I can't make any resolutions or change any, whether it's the new year or at any time of the year, really. But you can't really make any changes unless you're clear on where you're at and what you want and who you are, whatever that means. So this will be kind of an open conversation, us sharing our thoughts, our experiences. Emma and Cheyenne, two amazing coaches, sharing your experience with yourself, because this is not just a huge focus of your work, but also a huge focus of your interests and how you run your lives.
Mhm.
But the experience you have with yourself, the experiences you have with your clients, and yeah, I hope everyone watching will enjoy. So, Cheyenne, do you want to kick things off with a little meditation so we can all ground ourselves
Sure.
here?
Yeah, and anyone following, watching as well can follow along. So just a little grounding meditation to bring us into the space. So first, I just invite you to close your eyes. Just find yourself comfortable in the seat. And we're just going to start with some belly breaths. So just observing the breath going into the belly, coming in and out. Just slowly allowing your breathing to slow down, extending the inhales and the exhales. And as you're exhaling, I just invite you to pay attention to if there's anywhere in the body you're holding any tension, anywhere that might be tight, somewhere you might be unconsciously just holding tension. And just as you're breathing out, seeing if you can just relax any muscles that are tense right now. From here, I'm just going to invite you to, we're going to connect with a few of our intelligence centers in the body. So we're just going to check in what's happening in different parts of our body. And so the first place we're going to start is the stomach area. So what you just want to invite you to do is just to observe it, just to watch it very curiously, and just notice what's happening in the stomach area today at this moment. Just notice any feelings, sensations, movements. And anything you're noticing that might be comfortable or uncomfortable, I'm just going to invite you to invite those feelings. So just to welcome them into the body, just accept them for where they are. From the stomach area, I'm going to invite you up to the heart. And so if you like, you're welcome. You can put a hand over the heart just to check in and just notice again, just watching, being curious, just checking in how your heart's feeling today. In particular, I invite you to pay attention to how open or how closed your heart might be today. And again, just to welcome anything that might be alive in the heart area today, just to welcome it into the space. From the heart, I'm going to invite you up to the head. So we're going to observe it on two levels. So the first level is going to be sensation. So just wait to watch it, noticing how it's feeling, like any tensions, movements, heats, pain, whatever that might be there, just to watch it. And then to also invite just whatever's on your mind today, and just to give some space for that. And from there, I'm going to invite you to, we're going to tune our senses outside. So just want you to pay attention to any sounds you can hear. And just any sounds you can pick up. See if you can spend a few moments on each. And to also notice what is the quality of silence between any sounds. And from there, invite you all to the space that we're sharing between us today, the topic that we have at hand. Just noticing how that might feel in the body, what feels alive for you, what feels important for you to share, and just how it feels to be in this space. And just when you're ready, just invite you can open your eyes in your own time, and we can just reconnect back in the space.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How's that? Hopefully a bit more grounded.
That was really nice. I feel super calm. Okay. Would you, Shayan, want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Yeah, not a problem. So my name is Shayan Kadea. I am a creativity coach and a therapist. I work well with a broad range of issues, but a lot of the work I use is creative methods to understand our reality, to change our reality, to understand different parts of ourselves. I'm currently living in Medellin in Colombia, and yeah, I think I've been with Ascend from the start, right? I think Catherine, pretty early on. So yeah, it's been a journey and venture. And I'm excited for today, just sharing my own experiences of my own journey of the constant process of rediscovering self, right? Because I don't think it's just one, it happens once and you're like, I got it. It's like a constant process, and sharing bits of what's been helpful for me, and hopefully what's going to be helpful for others too.
Thanks a lot. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Of course, yes. Hi, my name's Emma Naylor. I am a career coach and business mentor. So I work with individuals, usually sort of professionals, who are looking to make a change in their career, whether that be, get a promotion, get a pay rise, or do a real sort of complete change in their career, change industries, all the way to, you know, leaving full-time roles and starting a new business venture. So many of my clients are from such different walks of life, but everything they really sort of have in common is the fact that they're feeling dissatisfied. And it's really interesting, this topic about rediscovering yourself, because a lot of people who go through those kind of moments of rediscovering themselves, a lot of the outcome is actually, I'm doing things in my career or in my life that I'm really dissatisfied with. So it's going to be a really interesting topic to discuss, both sort of on a personal side around rediscovering ourselves, but also on the sort of career and business venture side. So really looking forward to this topic.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you both. So, as you know, I have a first question for you just to kick things off. Again, I keep on saying kick things off. What does self or yourself mean to you? What is, whether it's a sense of self, whether it, you know, what does self mean to you?
I'm happy to go first. And I think for me, that sense of yourself, and it's a really interesting one, because I don't think enough of us really sit down and really think about what that actually means to us. I think we're so absorbed with everything else, not really understanding about ourselves. But to me, I think the sense of self is that sense of feeling of being and belonging within what we believe is important. I think the sense of us, of yourself, is doing things for you and feeling at peace and at calm with what you're doing. And I think for me, you know, one of the questions I've really been asking myself and ask a lot of my clients is around, is this for you or is this for someone else? And I'd say 9 times out of 10, a lot of the things that people are doing is not for themselves, it's for someone else. So I think for me, that feeling of yourself and that being is feeling content and happy with the decisions and the choices and the current reality that you're living, regardless of whether other people like that or other people agree with that, or if it doesn't align with what someone else thinks you should be doing. I think that self is all around feeling content and happy with your reality. That for me is sort of how that sits.
I really like that. That's a very nice definition. For me, self sits on similar lines. It's definitely, I think, at the times where I've been most connected to self, there's definitely a sense of calm internally. There's not much conflict in terms of decisions, and the outside noise, you know, I think like you're alluding to, Emma, is like it kind of fades out. It doesn't impact me so more because I know I'm kind of aligned on my own path. And in contrast to that, I know when I'm not with myself is when I'm noticing inner conflicts, a lot of inner conflicts, and in outer conflicts too, actually. It's some things just consistently maybe not working out, or these things that just happen, they seem to just happen in succession of like, things are not working out, and then it's like, okay, something's not right, something's not connected, whether it's me being connected to my values, with being true to myself. And that's the process of rediscovering of like, okay, who am I in this moment? And what's going to bring me back to a sense of calm and flow as well. I think is the other word. Just things just start to flow in life.
So it's interesting because you both define a sense of self not as, you know, anything external or even anything internal of, you know, myself is my behaviors, it's my my habits, or it's my personality traits, or it's, you know, it's nothing that's really, you haven't defined, you know, things that you are, but it's more about a feeling, and that feeling of oneness, I guess, within yourself, which is interesting because I think that's where we often find tension, is when we start, you know, associating that sense of self with other things that are like, you know, if I'm not successful, then I don't feel like I'm a good person. And that kind of like how we mix in our sense of self with either our achievements or externalities. And when, you know, two people who work on this a lot both define it as something that's more a feeling of oneness and almost separate from any of those, you know, check boxes, then I think that says a lot already.
I think what's really interesting about it as well, especially with the clients that I'm, you know, working with, often they define their purpose in life by their career. And I think it's really important to be able to separate your career and your purpose in life. So, for example, like if I take myself, my purpose in life is not to be a coach. I wasn't put on this earth to go, I'm going to be a career and business coach. My purpose is to help others to unravel and uncover what they're meant to be doing. The vessel just happens to be that it comes in the form of being a coach. And I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in my purpose is to have a successful career and make this amount of money and do all of these incredible things. And actually, we have to really strip it back and go, what is my purpose and what is myself? What are the things that I need fulfilled, regardless of title and money? It's really about the feelings. And I think it's interesting, as you said, that we both described that sense of self and yourself as being the feelings and the emotions of flow and calm and things really working, rather than saying, myself is when I hit those big goals or I hit those milestones. It's really, in my opinion, actually nothing to do with that. It is really that understanding, living in alignment and coming here and living in that reality that you're meant. And this does sound a little bit woo-woo, and it can, but it is really about living in that alignment where things do flow and things do feel like they're right. And I think it's really important not to get confused with easy. I don't think it should always be easy, but it shouldn't feel like this constant resistance. It should feel challenging, but it should feel right. And in that feeling when you get it in your stomach and you just know this is right or this is wrong. And it's really about what your gut feeling is telling you. And if it feels completely off, it might be because you're not living the true reality and you're not living yourself that you're meant to be. So I think it's interesting, that kind of crossover of your purpose and your career and your being in your career are actually two completely separate things, and not to kind of have those, they will overlap, but not having them defined as, your career is not your purpose.
I also hear from what you've said now and what you both said earlier is almost, there's that piece of acceptance that, saying that yourself is that feeling of being in the flow and dissociated from anything else or any specific attachment to, oh, I am me because I am generous, or I am me because I am XYZ. But it's also, there's that whole puzzle, there's that whole piece of just, I am because I am. And if I feel good, that's when I am most me.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting one, because a lot of people take on what they think they should be doing, what they think their parents want them to be doing, or I need to have this career, or I need to do this because actually it's expected from elsewhere. And when we go through those motions of rediscovering ourselves, of what we want for ourselves as adults, it can often be very, very different from what our parents wanted for us when we were children, or what our parents wanted for us when we grow up. And a lot of that comes from that rediscovering. And a lot of what I see with my clients is actually going, I never wanted this career in the city making X amount of money. What I actually wanted to do is do all of these other things. And it's really about understanding, well, what has stopped you from doing that? And, a lot of them will say, well, it's only now when I'm doing this work on myself that I've actually understood I didn't want that. That wasn't my dream. That was someone else's dream. And now that we're working through the rediscovering for what they want for their lives and their career and their relationships and their finances, whatever it is, that's where we actually really start working through and understanding what is it that you want, rather than what is it that other people want for you, that you may have started to believe was what you wanted as well.
Yeah, I think you've made some really interesting points, and I could relate for myself. Of in a previous profession, I was working as a lawyer, and I became very identified with that as me. And so when things weren't going well, then I associate a lot of my value from that. And so it was taking a lot of work to kind of deconstruct, actually, who am I? What is this self outside of being attached to any sort of profession or any sort of identity, really? And I feel like that's usually the magic spot where you can kind of redefine, recreate yourself. Because I think when we become very attached to, this is who I am, and I think you raise a good point. It can be, what I see is, it's conditioning, socialization of like, okay, this is who you're going to be. This is who you're going to be when you grow up, right? So you get that from schools, you get that from parents, but also from the other side, looking from a therapy lens as well. People who've experienced high levels of trauma where they've not been allowed to maybe grow up and to be themselves, they've maybe never really felt what it means to be connected to that self. And so that becomes another process to unravel these layers of like, okay, oh, so this is what it means when I'm connected to myself. And so, I could think of clients as well when they become self-led, actually that becomes the moment when they no longer need me, because that's usually what I try to get them to that point. It's like the internal configuration becomes works. And so like their value system, any sort of internal personalities that they have that are conflicting, they start to reconfigure themselves. And then the self kind of emerges and they're able to self-direct, and they're like, yeah, I think I'm good. And I'm like, okay, that's my work done for this point. So yeah, I really like your feedback on that as well, Emma.
Yeah, and I think as you said, what's a really interesting point is them actually being able to get to that point and going, you know what, I can actually do this on my own now. Because constantly when they're led by other people, they do need that. They do need that support from other people as well, whether that's the therapist, with the coach. And exactly as it's a really interesting one, because I often say to clients, we're going to work for a set amount of time. I want to give you the tools, not just so that you can work with me forever, because that's not what I want to do with my clients. I want to rewire their systems, get them to understand what is possible, and then go out and do it themselves. And that's the key part, is actually them getting to a point of understanding and really trusting themselves and going, actually, this is what I want to do for me. And I have the tools and I have the understanding of how to go and actually do that, rather than continuously thinking, I can't do this on my own. Because a lot of the clients, and we probably have a lot of clients that overlap in terms of, how they think and what they do, that their whole life it's constantly being, I'm looking for this person, this approval from this person because they told me that I should be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is. And actually they sort of get to a point where they go, you know what, I am trusting and I know that this is what I meant to be doing, whatever it is that they've decided. And they're really in a position to trust themselves, that they know themselves enough internally to go, actually, I trust myself enough to know that I can make this work, however that looks. And even if it's a real change in direction or a change in a path, they've got the tools and the understanding and the knowledge to be able to go and actually be aligned with themselves and live the life that they want to live, not for anyone else, but for themselves. And that's such a powerful moment, I think, as either a therapist or a coach, when you get a client to that point and you've been working with them and you truly see that switch in them when they go, actually, I'm able to go and implement this now. And, that's such a wonderful moment to share with them.
How would you say, obviously all of this, whether it's a client coming to you or for your own personal work, how do you know when you're in sync and how do you know when you're out of sync? Shayan, you said earlier, when you're in that state of flow and it's that feeling, but in a busy life where you have, you wake up, you get dressed, you go to the office, come home 12 hours later or how many hours later, and you don't really have that time to self-reflect. Then it's the weekend, you go out with your friends, have a few drinks, woke up, you're a bit hungover, go walk around, have a lunch. When do you how can you, if you have, let's say, 20 minutes, if someone watching is going to take 20 minutes to sit down and kind of take an audit of, okay, where am I at? What are some tools to first step understand? Am I still in sync with my current reality? Am I in a flow? Am I being myself, basically?
It's a good question. I'm going to speak for myself because I think there's so many tools that are helpful, and usually I open up a wide range of tools for clients. But I think the one that's always seems to be the one I come back to is taking time alone. Firstly, so trying to switch off outside if that's at 20 minutes as a consistent regular practice, and to journal. And so sometimes I like to use free flow journal. So you just ask yourself questions: am I happy? Am I living my purpose? What's missing? And these sort of things. Just by engaging in the process, and letting things out, something emerges from that process. And so at the most basic level, I find that just spending some time alone and writing of really, what's working, what's not working, as simple as that level will reveal a lot. And then, and also just making that a consistent space where you can check into that. Because I often find that's the case. People are too busy to even sometimes 10 minutes. I'm like, take 10 minutes for yourself. Oh, I haven't got the time. It's like, well, you have the time, but there's usually a resistance to spending that time with the self, because there's all the things possibly you've been avoiding that are going to pop up once you start spending that time. And and that's something I can relate to myself, because sometimes it happens. I'm very connected to myself, and I'm like, this is great. How could I have not lost this space? And then I lose it again, and then it's that do I want to spend time with myself? And then it comes back, and I'm like, oh my god, of course. There's like, where else would I be other than in this space with myself? And I start to enjoy it again. But I think it's always like an uphill struggle. It's never this beautiful euphoric moment when once you start spending time with yourself. I think a lot of uncomfortable things come up, truths in the silence, right? Or in that space when you're with yourself. But that's the space where you can start to process, start to work, start to reconfigure things.
So, not to that's exactly what I wrote down when you started speaking. Is I just wrote in big capital letters hard, and I
Yeah.
it because there is some resistance to that, right? I
Mm.
told you last week I've been going through this process, a different kind of therapy where there's just, and at first I was feeling like, wow, I really found out so many things about myself. This is a psychedelic therapy. And I
Mm.
found so many things about myself, and it felt really freeing. And I realized a lot of patterns that I was living in my life, and things that I was doing that were so obvious. And I feel like a lot of them dissolved in that process. But at the same
Mm.
time, after 3-4 weeks, a bunch of stuff has come to the surface that you open those doors, and then I picture it like the bottles, like little beer bottles full of different things that I've been putting away, and now the lids have come off, and some
Mm.
are popping up. It's not easy, right?
Mm.
And this whole process of asking yourself, even writing, if you're journaling and you write, am I happy? Am I satisfied with my job? Am I satisfied in my relationship? Do I have a good relationship to my parents? Am I happy living in Colombia? Am I whatever? It's difficult to be honest.
Mm.
And even, yes, when you're used to it and you feel you're in that right space, like we just did that meditation when we began, and if you have a bit of a process, but it's difficult to get in that space when you're actually really honest. So how what's a good motivator? And I feel like that's also some of the resistance some people have with the first decision, the first step of deciding to work with a coach, right? Well, if
Mm.
I enter that process, I'm going to have to make some changes, or I'm going to have to, face some hard truths probably.
Mm.
So what would you say as an argument to, but it's really worth it?
And I'm going to speak from personal experience, right? Because I've had lots of hours of both therapy and coaching, and I think why it works, when I really look at it, is there's places I don't want to go, or I'm scared to go alone, and I need someone to sit there with me to help me navigate it. And so then the scary places become less scary when I've got someone who's maybe going to take me there, be curious with me, help me see it from a different light, help me reframe it. That changes a lot. And so I can see that with myself. We all have our blind spots. We all have our points where we're scared to go, or we see that and we're like, I could go there, or I could just distract myself with Netflix, and it's usually, the distractions usually are more powerful. And so I feel like having people holding you accountable, people are willing to hold that space for you to go somewhere that you're scared to go by yourself, is really valuable. Because once you're there, you're like, of course, this is where the work is, and I'm so glad I went there. But often it's hard to go by yourself, and so you need that support on the way.
And if we strip that back to even someone who wants to start that exploration on their own, but they're scared to do so, then what's the appeal of really going on that journey of digging deeper and discovering who you are, what you want?
Hmm. It's an interesting question, because I often say this with clients and potential clients as well. I said, you need to be ready. And I have some clients tell me when they start, like, I'm ready, and I just see, like, almost like the floodgates open, because they're like, I'm in the right space.
Mm.
And I think, unfortunately, I think, societally, we're not encouraged to spend time with ourselves. Firstly, we're always encouraged to be busy, one form or the other. um, and also, just being part of that, we're not really. I think maybe it's changing now. There's more people open with mental health and coaching, but usually I think it gets to a breaking point when people start to really start looking. I mean, there are exceptions to that. There are people when things are slightly uncomfortable, then they start looking. That's a great time to start realigning things. But often I find it's got to a point where it's like, okay, I can't handle this by myself. I need someone to help me. And that's another form of being ready as well. And so often for me personally, I never try to, let's say, sell. I'm always like, look, the space is here. You know when you're ready, and usually when people are ready, the change comes very quickly. And so that for me is really important. I think part of the process as well.
Yeah. What do you think, Emma?
I think it's really interesting, and just like when both of you were sort of talking about it, I was sort of doing what Shayan was doing and really relaying it sort of my own experience. And it's interesting. Often, I used to have this behavior where I would almost wait until it was really, 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 really bad to actually take action on it. And then what I would want overnight is I'd want quick, instant results. And I'd have to remember that actually it's taken me a long time to get this bad into this situation. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think it's a really interesting one, because a lot of the clients that I speak to, and kind of as Shayan said, they're either ready or they're not ready. You're never going to sell to someone who's not ready. And that's why, a lot of the discovery calls that I have with people, I always say to them, look, it's not going to be easy. And I really, really want to make sure that they understand that, because I don't want them to work with me and then 3 weeks in go, God, this is so difficult. Gosh, this is, I didn't think it was going to be this hard. And actually, I'm there, as Shayan said, to sort of handhold you, but also to give you the tools. And in order to give you the tools, we're going to have to do some of the difficult work. And, I've had some conversations with people where they've been really honest with me, and they've just said, look, I'm just not ready. Like, I'm not ready. Or there have been clarity calls where I've had with clients. And, one of the suggestions I've said to them, I'm really, really careful with this, is actually, I feel like there might be some pre-work that you need to do, either with a therapist or either with a specialist trauma coach or someone that can actually unpack some of this stuff before we work together. Because although I do some of that, a lot more of it is, the strategy behind it, the really, digging deep, yes. But I think it's also really important, if there are key aspects in their life that they haven't dealt with, to go and deal with a specialist in that area. And I think this is really important whenever you're speaking with a coach or you're thinking about investing in a coach, is, do they have the skill set to be able to deal with that specific area? And, I'm always very, very clear with people, if there's an area that I don't believe I could support them in, there may be someone in my network who can support them in that. And I'm always happy to refer them, because I think it's really important that when you are holding that space for someone, that you are the expert in that space and you have really been able to help other clients through it, or you've been through something similar, or you're able to really hold that space. And I think that's really, really key. So if anyone is thinking about, getting a coach, have clarity calls, have conversations, ask those questions, get an understanding of, are they going to be the right person to help you through this? And if they're not, that's okay. Maybe they'll play a part later on in your journey, but they're just not meant to be there right now. And, going back to sort of what helps me is, journaling for me is so important. And I used to love it. I used to. And what I really love doing now, which is a little bit different, I love going on long walks, but I voice memo and journal instead that way. I really, really struggle to write for a continuous amount of time. And I'll often find myself, avoiding doing it, or doing a short journaling session when actually I know that there's lots that I need to get out. So I voice note on an app on my phone, and it means I can have my headphones in, be on my dog walk, have my coffee, and just kind of get everything else out. And then at a later stage, I'm also able to go back and listen and go, right, actually, where was I? Like, what was going on with me, and what have I done, and what can I implement again? And it's a really good way for me. And again, it works for me. It doesn't work for everyone, but a lot of my clients have started doing that, and they absolutely love the fact that, it's different from writing, or you can sort of match both up. But I think regardless of what it is, it's really important for you to find something that works for you, not because everyone on Instagram is saying that you should journal every morning or meditate every morning or whatever it is. You need to find what works for you and what, your way of sort of getting things out. So I think that's the sort of number one thing, is finding something that works for you, not just based on what someone on Instagram has said that sort of works. And I think that's a really, really key aspect.
For sure. That's what we spoke about last week as well with Shayan when we were discussing this, and that brought up the topic of fun and experimentation. And I feel like we've been focused, there's a lot, also I'm in this space right now where the process of discovery has been really hard the last couple of weeks. But there is a huge aspect. I mean, today I already had a little up of fun and more, in that zone of fun. Ultimately, we put a lot of pressure on all this work, and there is, and it's difficult and all of that, but it can also be really enjoyable. And ultimately, it's remembering that you're doing this for you and you're doing it. Well, that should be the end of the sentence, right? It's to feel good, that should be just the sole motivator, but maybe we're not used to focusing on ourselves or chasing our own flow and our own happiness enough. But yeah, there's so many fun little tricks. I love what you say about doing those voice notes when you're on calls and just finding what really works, because that's the thing. We have these, recipes that are spelled out for us on social media or in blogs or all these things. I mean, we do it on the Instagram at Send account. Usually it's suggestions and we try to keep it varied, right? But what is a successful person's morning routine like? You have to wake up at 5 and then you have to work and then that's not necessarily what works for me. So what are some of like the fun little routines or tricks that you have for yourself?
So something I've started doing a little bit more recently, either with friends, with my fiance, or even on my own. And actually that's sort of a side note that I'm definitely trying to do more things on my own and kind of have that time. But I think something for me, I try and do something that is so not what I would usually do. And I know that sounds so simple, but in the summer, I climbed the 3 peaks in Yorkshire, which is 27 miles. And I didn't train for it. Not that I would recommend that by any stretch of the imagination. But it was one of those things where my friend was organizing it. She said, "Do you want to do it?" And I sort of went, "Yeah, why not?" And just did it. I've signed up for a marathon, not because I'm a marathon runner, not because I even run at all, but it's one of those things where I just sort of go, let me try it. Let's train. Let's see what happens. I'm definitely trying out more things and just doing things without going, well, I need to run the marathon and I need to finish in 4 hours. And I'm kind of doing thing and removing the outcome. And I think that's sort of what it is actually trying something rather than going, I'm not going to do that because I'm not good at it. And I've been having a conversation with a friend recently who isn't good at dancing. And I sort of said to them, I said, it's not about being good at dancing. It's about how it makes you feel. And if it makes you feel good, then do it. There's no one that's going to be watching you saying, you're not a good dancer, you shouldn't be dancing. It is all about how it makes you feel. And I think that's the really key thing is if you're doing something as a punishment or you're doing something because you think you should, that's not right. Do things that you don't think you're necessarily good at. Try a different gym class, sign up for something, whatever it is, it should be that it's fun. And if it's not fun, leave the gym class. If you start doing a hike for an hour and you realize it's not for you, you finish the hike. It's very much the ego thing where we don't do new things and exciting things because we're so scared that we're not going to be good at it that we avoid it at all costs. So one of the big things that I try and do, as I said, is just pick a really, really small thing and just try and do it. And I promise you, it'll either be fun and you'll want to do it again, or you'll go, that's something I'll never do again. And you lost 10 minutes of your life. It's not about taking everything so seriously. It's about doing things that are fun and new and exciting. And I don't think we do enough of that.
That's great.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And something we spoke about, Catherine, as well, is that the space of not knowing, right? The space of experimenting. It's not generally encouraged in society. It's like, someone leaves a career and they don't know what's next. It's like, what are you doing next? And it's like, I don't know. And people don't like to be in that space. And similarly to what you were saying, Emma, as well, I see that a lot because I try to open up different creative channels with my clients. And so one thing I like to introduce is art. And so usually, the typical one I can't draw. And I see it's very much a trauma response because I'm like, well, you know how to hold a pencil, you know how to move it on a paper, so you know how to draw, right? So that's not the problem. And then when we start going deeper, it's usually the perfectionist, usually the critics, usually maybe something that's happened at school. And so often with these sort of, like trying something new, I usually bring them come back to a kid, come back to being innocent, coming back to just having fun. And so usually, when it comes to like art therapy, that's the main thing. I'm like, you're just focusing on expression. Start with that. Just get colors on the page. Just enjoy it. Don't worry about how it looks. I'm not judging it. And I advise you try not to judge it. And then you start to see things start to open up with people. And sometimes art's their thing. People are like, oh my God, thank you for opening this up. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they prefer something movement. Sometimes they prefer something acting. But it's it's that space for experimentation and the unknown, right? Of just being in that space of maybe I like this, maybe I won't, right? Which we don't create enough space for. And usually I think, that's the benefit of a good therapist, a good coach, is that they kind of push you a little bit of like, just try it, and if anything comes up around the perfectionist, the critic, then that's stuff you can start to work with. But just getting out there and trying different stuff is so key to discovering who you are. Something might click. I mean, that's usually what happens for me. I try different things, and something just like, this is my thing right now. This is my thing, and I want to get good at it. And I think we just need more spaces for that, for more play and experimentation.
And I think exactly as you just said, it's one of those things where, we think back to being a child, and, the friend of mine who actually I signed up with the 3 Peaks for, who also runs marathons, she's incredible. She's such an inspiration to me. This friend of mine said to me, when we're children and we're learning to walk, how many times do we try and walk and we fail? We fall down. No child ever goes, well, you know what? I've tried to walk once. I'm not very good at it, and I just won't do it again. You continue and you continue, because we don't know about failure. We don't know about not doing. We just continue going. We look back at the art that we've created as children, and we were so proud of it and wanted our parents to hang it on the fridge. We look back at that now and go, wow. As adults, I look back on my art and go, wow, that's really bad. I feel bad for my parents having to put that on in our fridge in our home. But it's one of those things that we used to create so much time, and it wasn't about the outcome. It was how it made us feel. When we created that piece of art, it wasn't that it was, a Monet or an amazing masterpiece. It was fun to do. We were at school, and then the look on our parents' faces when we would give it to them, and they'd be so happy. And it's one of those things where you're right. We don't create enough of that space because we're so scared about the outcome that we don't allow ourselves that space for enjoyment, because we're so, and even when we're in it, if you go to an art class, you'll see people go, this isn't very good, this isn't great, this is wrong, rather than actually going, this is really fun, and it doesn't matter what the outcome is. We always end up being so infatuated with the outcome that we don't actually enjoy the process. And I don't think that's just in the creativity. I think it's with everything we do. Why do people not start businesses? Why do people not move careers? Because they're so worried about failing that they're not even thinking about the fact that it might just be really, really fun, and removing themselves from the outcome. And that's one of the other biggest things is, I say this to my clients, is if you were to remove the end goal, would you do it? Absolutely, I would. Then why aren't you? And that's one of the biggest moments, and the light bulb moments, where they go, actually, what is the worst that can happen? Most of the time, the worst result isn't actually as bad as you think it is in your own head. And allowing yourself that space to be creative or try new things. And once you find that space and you give yourself that permission, it is such a magical space to be.
Yeah. I was also, we were talking, me and Catherine were talking last time, there's also the trap, because I paint. And so I used to be very artistic. I stopped for a number of years. And then art therapy actually just, the process of having fun opened things up. And then I was like, oh, I want to get better at this. And I realized the other trap was people started telling me, oh, you're good at this. You should make this a career. You should make this into something. Yes, and then it becomes this, then it became about other people, and then it stopped becoming about me. And so then I realized I have to constantly be in this process of coming back to what do I enjoy, right? Because even you might get trapped in that process as well, where you've created a masterpiece, and now you stop creating because you can't ever top that masterpiece again, right? Or a business or whatever it is. And so for me, it's that constant humbling process almost of coming back to, okay, I enjoy this. I'm just going to come back to doing this because I enjoy it. And sometimes things are good just to keep them as a hobby, no matter, you don't have to turn it into a Instagram career or it's sometimes it works, but sometimes that takes away the very fun or the very, the healing process sometimes of having some of these creative pursuits.
We live in such a generation now where everything is monetized, turn it into a side hustle, make some money off it. And actually, there's a girl I follow on Instagram, and she massively got into whole fitness over I think it was before lockdown. And, she always gets messages being like, you should teach and you should do this. And she said, this is the one thing in my life that is not monetized. Everything else is work. This is the one thing in my life where I love sharing what I'm doing. I love putting up videos. I love creating. I don't need to make money out of it. But I do think we live in such a world right now where everything is, you could make money out of that, you could sell it, you could do this. And exactly as you said, is it almost, we then become obsessed with the outcome again, which is great, this needs to be good enough so people are willing to pay, and therefore if it's not good enough, people aren't going to pay, and then I'm not enough. And I think it's really important to go, actually, getting understanding of, I don't have to monetize everything, I can actually just do things for fun, and it doesn't have to be a career.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Shayan, go for it.
No, go ahead. I was just saying yes. That was it.
Well, I was going back a few minutes when you were talking about doing things that we're not used to doing or that we're not good at, and the ego and all of these things. And I think even outside of art, even outside of the creative, like our creative outlets or the things we do for fun, there's also a whole piece that comes in about rediscovering or discovering yourself and asking yourself the right questions. Like, this is all part of the conditioning, right? Like you're a kid in school told like, this doesn't look like a horse. And then you think you can't draw a horse and da-da-da. But how does that translate into adulthood? And I caught myself in my session the other day, starting to freak out about something that I'd said. And then I just saw it in a different light where I'm like, wait a minute, why am I so worried about how the person across from me is going to react to what I just said? I said it with good intentions. And then I started tripping out about all the different reactions that person could have had. And it made me realize how much of that is present in my kind of everyday, of being careful not to step on anybody's toes, or, oh, I said that, but I didn't mean it because, oh, did I cut you off? Did it make you feel like, and this is my behavior, but we all have these things, these blockages that have become like second nature, or not even first nature, that are so present in the way that we show up in the world. And yeah, how can we learn? How can we take a step back from all of this just conditioning of how we are, and really find kind of the essence again, the core, the child, the freedom, just to liberate like who we are.
You raise an interesting point, Catherine, something that came up for me, because I'm just thinking about like a vast majority of my clients. I would say 90% of my clients are people who think about others before they think about themselves, right? And I think this probably speaks for a lot of coaches and therapists I met as well. They're people who are very good at empathizing, but they tend to lose themselves in the process, right? And so then, or they've never really had that space for themselves, or be encouraged to find that space for themselves, which is really the benefit of having some sort of coaching or therapies that really is bringing that space back to being more selfish in a way that's healthy, right? And I think this is where people find hard, because there's often guilt. Maybe there's like, not putting myself first, because they're not used to doing that, right? And so usually I find out with these sort of clients, it's actually trying to counterbalance their generosity really with a lot of people, and often losing themselves, draining themselves for other people, because they've not used to actually putting themselves at the center of their own world, right? And that becomes a process to bring them to that space of, no, like, you are the most important person in your world. Your glass needs to be full to fill up other glasses. And I feel like that's definitely a process. And the type of people who end up coming to therapy, I see that, or sorry, not just therapy, for coaching, like good people at heart, and just need a little bit of nudging to find themselves again.
I think it's a really interesting one. And, I think back at the conversations that I've had either with current clients or in clarity calls. And I think exactly what you said, most of the people who want to change careers, or, create a new career, or, whatever it is that they're looking to do within sort of their career and business, it is that fear of, but what about this person? Am I letting this person, if it doesn't work, who am I letting down? And, a lot of it does come from that fear of letting other people down. And, the biggest question I ask is, if you're saying no, if you're saying yes to someone else, are you saying no to yourself? And I heard that question really, really early on in my journey, where I I'm not sure. I don't remember what I wanted to do, but I remember the answer for that. And my therapist turned around to me and said, Emma, I want you to ask, every time you say yes to someone else, does that mean you're saying no to yourself? And it's a question that I ask myself a lot of the time. You know, if someone asks me to do something, or if someone says to me, you know, I would like you to do this, I think to myself, right, am I doing this from a place of I'm wanting to people please? And does it mean that actually I'm taking away from myself? Or do I actually want to do this because I think it feels super aligned? And let's take this panel, for example. When Catherine asked me to do this panel, I sat down, I looked at my diary and I thought, does this feel aligned to where I'm going? Am I saying yes to myself? Am I, saying yes to Catherine and asking to do this opportunity? Am I taking away from things? Am I absolutely burning myself and putting something else in my diary that I don't have time for? And the answer was no. I'm saying yes to me because it's aligned with my business and aligned with what I'm trying to, get my message. And and I'm saying yes to Catherine. Great, it's worked. But if it hadn't, I would also be okay with going, thank you so much for asking. Unfortunately, my diary is so packed for the rest of the year. I'd love to take you up on the offer for the next one. And I would be okay with that. A lot of people go, well, actually, I'm really, really busy. I don't have time in my diary, but I don't want to say no to Catherine. So I'm just going to say yes. And I'm saying no to myself because that time is coming from somewhere else. And I think being able to get to that space, it's not easy. It's really, really not easy. And it's taken me a lot of therapy, coaching, work, all of that. And also that fear of, someone saying to you, well, I really need you to do this. And it's really about being able to say, I understand you need me to do this, but I need to do this for me more. And I think being able to get to that point, it's not perfect. Believe me, there are still moments where I'll say yes to things and go, I shouldn't have said yes to that. But we're still learning, we're still growing. And I think the most important thing is, if you are struggling with certain things, start with that really simple question of, if I'm saying yes to someone else or yes to an opportunity or yes to whatever it is, am I saying no to myself? And even if you still go, but I'm still going to say yes, it's about the awareness and starting really small and starting to build up. And you're not going to be able to do it day one, but you will be able to do it over time. So start asking yourself those questions and really just being aware of how much you're saying yes to things when actually you wish you were saying no.
There's something in line with that I've been practicing this year. There's an author called Derek Sivers, and he's written a book. I can't remember exactly the name, but it was something along the lines of it's either a fuck yeah or a no. And that's been something I've been trying to put more into practice this year. And so if it's a lukewarm yes, it's a no. And this has been really good practice in terms of boundaries, of saying yes to myself, of like really what's getting me excited. Because the more I'm like, if it's a fuck yeah, then it's like, it's generating sort of energy. It's a really, I want to be there, but it also generates more of that. And so then it creates space for more of that and a lot more no's. And that's a hard process as well, because, you have to be a little bit ruthless in that. But I've found that as I've been putting that more into practice of really like, what's a real solid yes versus what's yes, I'm kind of doing it because I feel like I should.
Yeah.
It's just creating more space of more of the things that I really want come into my life. And so that's been an interesting process as well.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it comes down to that process of self-reflection, right? And being kind of stepping away as well. I mean, we've mentioned a few times the times that we live in as well, with social media and with everything being so, not even just about the monetization aspect of it, but like everything being quite fabricated. And how do you show up? What's my image? How do I come off? How do I live up to this false ideal of who I should be? And actually taking a step back, going back to the roots and saying like, what do I want for me? And really having that, nurturing that relationship to your own needs and yourself, really. And I guess, how can somebody who's watching this, who maybe doesn't have any kind of self-reflective practice, how can they bring more of that into their life?
I would say the thing for me, and I always think back about my journey, because none of us started this journey being fully aware. Like, we all started our journey earlier in our lives, later in our lives, whenever it was. And I think the really big thing for me was really getting in tune with myself, because I used to think that everyone felt how I felt. I used to think that everyone felt burnt out 24/7 in a job they hated, because no one likes their jobs in reality. Apparently, that's what I used to think. I used to think I needed to say yes to everything, do to everything. So I think the first practice that I really, really did was sit down, and I've involved this, and I now call it this very not a scientific name at all. I call it a brain dump. And it honestly is the most it literally does what it says. And I sit down and I just write down everything that's going on in my life, relationships, friendships, work, whatever it is, anything that's in my head, I need to get it onto paper, because I often find that in my head, it can make up things that actually aren't even going on. And I can find 100 things, that aren't actually going on in my reality. So I constantly write this down. I then try and divide it up. And then from there, I'll go, where am I and where do I want to be? That's step one. Where am I and where do I want to be? And then I try and understand, what is stopping me from getting there? And you don't, and I really, really want to reiterate this, you don't have to change your life in one day. You won't do it in one afternoon. And I think this is, again, where this whole social media thing comes from, where we see people going, this is my perfect life, this is what I do. And actually, we don't see the behind the scenes work that has been going on for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We see the end result. So I think it's really, really important to identify what are the areas in your life that are feeling a little bit mismatched. Where are you now and then? Where do you want to be? What is stopping you? And what kind of blanks do you need to be able to fill in? And, you can repeat that process. It's not just a once a year thing or once in a lifetime thing. It can be a continuous process where every time you feel something's misaligned, write it all down, have a look, see what's not working, see what's working, and make small is the key word in this, small but consistent changes, rather than trying to revamp your whole life in one day, because you will just get too overwhelmed and not end up sort of doing anything. So that would be my big thing. And that's really where my journey started, was just understanding something wasn't aligned, writing it all down and taking it from there.
That's that's really powerful, Emma. Thanks for sharing that, because I think that's very similar as well. Like brain dumps are so powerful. If I was approached from looking at myself, I think regularly creating space where you can be with yourself, whatever that looks like for you, is super important. So for me, nature time, away from tech, those are the most, sometimes really helps me reconnect with myself, being able to sit with a little bit of my discomfort. What am I avoiding? And I think probably one of the most powerful attitudes to have is an attitude of curiosity.
Yeah.
And I feel like this will get you so far. And even asking questions about yourself, like, am I really this? Because sometimes we become very fixed with identities, with thoughts, with beliefs, and then also just having that process of questioning, like, am I still that? Am I not that? And allowing that curiosity to build step on step. You don't need to have the answers. And I feel like this has been really important for my own journey, is to be curious about myself, of like curious as who am I evolving? Who am I right now? As it changes moment to moment. Because as soon as I fix it, like, no, this is me, this is definitely me, or this is definitely what's right, then, that's usually when problems start, because down the line, I'm not that anymore, that's changed. And so having this constant ability to be curious is really helpful. And also, I think I know we're coming towards the end, I want to just introduce a tool that maybe people find helpful, particularly towards the end of the year. So there's a website, Year Compass. It's a free downloadable handbook, and it's got just a bunch of questions to reflect on the year, and reflect on things that went well, things that didn't go so well, things and different areas, as well as what you want for 2023. And this is something I've done for the last 3-4 years, and it's definitely been helpful to just kind of gauge of like, how was this year for me, and also what do I want in the year coming forward. And so, in terms of a process of rediscovering self, understanding yourself, it's a nice, free tool to just take stock of where you are right now and what you want for the next year as well.
Nice, thanks. I'll share that as well along with the talk.
No worries.
Cool. Do either of you have any closing comments on this topic?
I think the one big thing for me, and I think Shayan, both him and I have kind of mentioned this, is you're constantly going to be evolving. There is no end goal in what you're doing. I think one of the things I really struggled with when I first started was having this picture perfect life. And once I got there, everything would be fine. And actually, you know, I've had multiple careers, I've had, you know, house moves, changes, French, whatever it's been, it's always been evolving and it's always been changing. And one of the things I've really, really learned is there is no end goal. You are constantly evolving and rediscovering yourself. And, you know, it's something we've mentioned a lot of the time is give yourself that space. If you are finding that you need space every single month or once a year or once a week, there is no wrong and right way to allow yourself that space. But if there's that niggling feeling, dig into it, do a brain dump, give yourself some space, step away from technology, do whatever it is you need to do. This is not a one time, it is a continuous journey. And I think the last thing is remember to enjoy it. As I said, there's no end goal. It's not, I'm going to do this, you know, for 3 years and then suddenly everything's going to be great. It is a continuous journey. So make sure that you find that time for play, for fun, to do things, to have adventure. I think that's one of the really, really important things for me.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think for me, you know, the most important thing is to enjoy the process. Like try to find the ways. What do you need? What are the tools you need to enjoy each day, right? Because that's really what. It's a hard thing to, you know. It sounds so like spiritual high end, like, oh yes, you know, just be and enjoy the moment. But really, you know, like that's really when the magic happens, right? When you're able to adjust your life in a way that you're able to enjoy each day, right? As opposed to I'm doing this until this happens. And then you kind of get there, you know, that dopamine high is kind of driving you to that goal. And then there's going to be a drop of like, oh, this wasn't as good as I thought it would be, right? And so finding just those, how can you get a bit more flow, a bit more enjoyment in each day? And I often for me, that's the attitude of curiosity, you know, just trying to come back to almost childlike innocence of looking at things. That really helps me to just readjust and take each day as it comes.
I love that. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. I don't know if I can, I love the conversation that we had and I'm excited to share it with more people. This will be going up on a bunch of places, including YouTube and our socials. But I don't know if I have any closing comments. I'm kind of lost in thought and reflection, to be honest, where it's a process that we're all a part of. And I think it's beautiful to be able to share and encourage more people to take that time to disconnect from tech and reconnect to self, and disconnect from, you know, other people and reconnect to the self. And that's kind of what we're all, you know, doing together as a collective. And I'm just super grateful for that. So thanks for being here today and spreading the love. So we're going to end the broadcast here, but we can stay in here.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.